Former Victorian Premier Daniel Andrews is fighting a court order to submit phone records from the day his family's Ford SUV collided with a teenage cyclist who was seriously injured on impact. The 15-year-old bike rider, Ryan Meuleman, was riding on the Mornington Peninsula when he was struck on January 7, 2013. He sustained serious injuries, including a punctured lung, broken ribs, internal bleeding, and lost 90% of his spleen. Dan Andrews' wife, Catherine, was behind the wheel at the time. Dan Andrews has engaged high-profile lawyer Leon Zwier and labelled the subpoena requiring him to produce phone records from that day a fishing expedition. We did reach out to Dan Andrews' media contact for response and have not received a reply. We are happy to put their version of events to air at any time if they respond to our request. Ryan's father, Peter, joins me now. Peter, tell me about what you hope to achieve with this legal action.
We're hoping to get justice for Ryan from this. It's just been such a long road for us. So we'd really like to get closure on the case, and if we can get some honesty, some transparency and some justice for him.
It's been more than a decade. We'll talk about how this has impacted your son and your family. But first, speaking on behalf of the Jacinta Allen government, Minister Lily D'Ambrosio has said that this matter has already been thoroughly investigated.
This matter has been thoroughly investigated and has been concluded, and there's nothing more to be added to this. I'm not going to get into court matters, but what I can say to everybody is that whenever this pops up every now and then, the matter has been thoroughly investigated by all relevant authorities, and there's nothing more to be added to it, and I won't be adding any more comments to it.
What's your response to that?
Well, we don't feel that it's been thoroughly investigated. There's been a lot of new evidence come to light just recently. The 000 call, for one, and we don't believe that it was thoroughly investigated back at the time. There was no breathalyser done on either of the occupants of the car. Daniel Andrews removed the car from the crash scene, so removed that evidence from the scene.
He says that he did that to drive the kids home because his kids in the car were alarmed by the accident. So just to give his side, but yeah, you're right, because we did have Dr. Raymond Shuey, who's the state's former Assistant Commissioner for Traffic and Operations. He looked into this accident and said that Victoria Police, the investigation they did, had 12 critical standards that were failed. The standard operating procedures were not followed in at least a dozen instances. Have you had an explanation from Victoria Police for why they didn't do those sort of things? You mentioned the breathalyser. There's a number of other things they didn't do properly. Have they been forthcoming and explained their failures there?
No, we've had no correspondence from VicPol at all, and so that raises further suspicion, I guess. If they felt that they'd done their job entirely, they would have come to us and said, well, look, we looked at it this way and that way and that way. But none of that happened. We've been really kept out of the loop, and I think that they just wanted to close it from their end, probably to protect a political career. But our lawyers and our research team have uncovered a lot of things. As I said, the breathalyser, the removal of the car. Yes, he took the children home, and I'm aware that they would have been alarmed, but those children were also witnesses to that accident, which is a crucial piece of evidence as well.
Now, as I mentioned earlier, the former Premier Dan Andrews is fighting the court order to submit his phone records from that night. What is your message to him? If you could speak to him directly, if he's watching, what is your message to Dan Andrews?
If you've got nothing to hide, you'd be transparent about all of those records. But if you've got something to hide, then you're going to fight to disclose those records.
But he says it's a fishing expedition, so we're not casting any doubt on his reasons for that. But you've made the point that given his standing in the community, the fact that he's just been honoured with the country's highest honour, an AC, do you feel like he should be forthcoming and provide those records just to make this matter not drag out even longer in the courts?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel that he should bring those records forwards. Again, you know, if you've got nothing to hide. And to say that it's still a fishing expedition, it's a legal case, which is far from a fishing expedition. So we just want that clarity and that closure and that justice.
Now, how has Ryan's life been impacted with this crash? We spoke earlier about his terrible injuries, but it's been a critical juncture in his young life, isn't it, at the age of 15 to undergo something like that?
Yeah, the injuries that he sustained were terrible, but you do recover from those physical injuries. It's probably been the mental injuries that he has sustained from that. He was incredibly traumatised from that accident, but further to compound that, he was warned that if he spoke about that incident, that he would be in trouble by the police. So there's a 15...
Who gave him that warning?
Oh, I think it was either the lawyers or it might have been Vic Police themselves. I'm really not too sure. But if you're a 15-year-old boy, that would scare you to death. So he really feels like he's been shut down and silenced since that 2013 accident.